Come, let us pray. God is here.
Father God, I come before you carrying the quiet weight of a tired and weary soul, a heart that has tried to stay strong for too long without knowing where to rest. And tonight I do not come with polished words or perfect faith. I come with honest breathing, trembling hope, and a longing to feel your nearness again, because you see the hidden exhaustion behind the smiles. You hear the silent prayers that never found courage to become sound. And you understand the kind of tiredness that sleep cannot heal, the tiredness that settles deep inside the chest and makes even simple steps feel heavy. And still, Lord, you draw close without pressure, without disappointment, without demands, like a gentle light entering a dark room without forcing the eyes to adjust too quickly. You remind this fragile heart that it is allowed to pause, it is allowed to feel, it is allowed to need you. And in this soft and holy moment, if you feel safe enough, let your heart quietly open and invite God to step into your weariness right now, because you are not offended by weakness. You are not distant from confusion. You are not silent in the middle of quiet suffering. You are the God who walks slowly beside broken courage, who notices trembling hands, who stays when words disappear. And I ask you to touch the places no one else can reach, the memories that still ache, the disappointments that still echo, the dreams that feel far away, and the fear that whispers that nothing will change. Wrap this soul in your calm presence. Steady this restless mind, and gently remind this heart that it is not forgotten, not delayed, not invisible to heaven, but deeply known, deeply loved, and carefully held in your mercy, even now. Lord, in this quiet continuation of your presence, I bring before you a soul that feels stretched thin by unseen battles and gentle disappointments, a heart that keeps showing up even when it secretly wonders how much strength is left. And I thank you because you do not measure faith by energy. You measure it by trust. And tonight this trust looks like soft surrender rather than loud confidence. You know the moments when silence feels heavier than noise, when prayers feel slow and fragile, when the body rests, but the mind keeps wandering through worries that refuse to sleep, and still, you remain patient with every unanswered question, every trembling breath, every small attempt to believe again, and right here, right now. If your spirit is tired of carrying everything alone, whisper inside yourself and invite God to hold the part of you that feels most overwhelmed tonight, because you are the shepherd who never rushes wounded sheep, the father who does not shame a weary child, the friend who understands when words fall apart before reaching the lips. And I ask you, gentle God, to soften the tight places in this heart. Loosen the grip of fear that quietly steals peace. Heal the slow ache of disappointment that built walls around hope, and pour your calm into this restless soul like warm light spreading through cold rooms. Remind this heart that progress can be slow and still be holy, that healing can be quiet and still be real, and that even now, in the middle of uncertainty, you are carefully rewriting this story with mercy, patience, and love that never grows tired of staying. Father, as this prayer continues to unfold like a soft river through a tired heart, I lift before you the hidden weight this soul has been carrying in silence, the expectations that grew heavier than the strength available, the responsibilities that never seem to rest, and the quiet fear of failing the people who depend on this fragile courage. Yet you see far deeper than performance and far beyond results. You see intention, you see effort, you see the tears that were swallowed before anyone noticed, and you gently remind this weary spirit that it does not have to earn your presence. It does not have to prove its value. It does not have to arrive whole before being welcomed, because you meet us in pieces and patiently gather what feels scattered. And in this tender moment, if your heart longs for relief even without knowing how to ask, softly invite God to step into your uncertainty, and breathe peace into what feels unstable inside you. Because you are the one who steadies shaking faith without demanding perfection. You are the one who lifts heavy thoughts without minimizing pain. You are the one who sits beside discouragement without rushing its process. And I ask you now to quiet the storms that live behind this tired smile. Calm the restless questions that spin through the mind late at night. Heal the disappointment that quietly changed the way this heart hopes. And restore gentle confidence where self-doubt has slowly taken root. Teach this soul to trust small beginnings again, to recognize subtle progress, to believe that unseen growth is still growth, and let your presence become the safe place where this weary heart learns that it is allowed to breathe slowly, walk softly, and still be moving forward in grace. Lord, you are still here in this quiet space where tired thoughts slowly soften and restless emotions finally feel seen, and I bring before you a heart that has learned how to endure far more than it ever expected, a soul that became strong out of necessity rather than choice, and yet still longs to feel gentle again, because you know how survival slowly teaches us to protect ourselves even from hope. You understand how disappointment reshapes expectations, and you see how repeated delays can quietly drain joy from simple dreams. But you never confuse endurance with healing, and you never ask a weary heart to remain in survival mode forever. And in this delicate moment, if you feel safe enough to stop holding everything together for a breath, invite God to sit with you right where you are and carry what you no longer have strength to hold, because you are the God who restores softness without removing wisdom, who rebuilds trust without erasing the past, who brings new life without forcing old wounds to reopen. And I ask you to gently reawaken hope in this tired spirit, not the loud kind that ignores reality, but the quiet kind that grows slowly and patiently beneath the surface. Soften the fear of being disappointed again, loosen the grip of comparison that steals peace, and heal the invisible fatigue that no one else notices. Remind this heart that it does not need to rush its healing. It does not need to explain its pace, and it does not need to pretend it is stronger than it feels, because your love meets this soul exactly where it stands and carefully leads it forward, one gentle breath at a time. Father, as your presence continues to gently wrap around this tired and weary soul, I bring before you the quiet frustration of unanswered prayers, the slow ache of waiting when nothing seems to move, and the hidden discouragement that grows when effort does not match results. Yet you see every step taken in faith, every small act of obedience, every silent choice to not give up even when motivation fades, and you are never absent in seasons that feel unproductive, because you work deeply where no applause can reach and no timeline can measure. And in this tender space, if your heart is longing for reassurance tonight, simply invite God to walk with you through this waiting and hold your hand through the uncertainty, because you are the God who builds roots before showing fruit, who strengthens character before opening doors, who shapes hearts before changing circumstances. And I ask you now to calm the anxious need for immediate answers, to ease the pressure this soul places on itself, and to restore quiet trust where impatience has slowly grown. Remind this heart that delays are not denials, that silence is not abandonment, and that slow seasons are not wasted seasons. Breathe fresh courage into weary thoughts, replace heaviness with gentle clarity, and let this tired spirit feel your steady companionship in the middle of unfinished prayers, unfinished dreams, and unfinished stories, knowing that you remain faithful not only at the destination, but also in every unseen and fragile step along the way. Lord, in this unfolding silence where your nearness feels softer than words, I bring to you the part of this tired soul that feels misunderstood, the moments when strength was assumed and pain was overlooked, the seasons when giving became a habit and receiving felt unfamiliar. And still, you never confuse resilience with fullness. You know when a heart keeps serving while quietly running empty. You notice when kindness becomes a mask for exhaustion, and you gently lean close without asking this soul to explain itself. And in this fragile and holy pause, if you sense a quiet longing to be seen without performing, invite God to look into your heart right now and meet you without expectations, because you are the God who restores from the inside before repairing what others can notice. You are the God who refills compassion without draining the one who gives. You are the God who teaches tired hearts that rest is not weakness, but trust. And I ask you to release this soul from the pressure of always being strong. Soften the inner voice that demands more than grace allows. Heal the invisible fatigue that comes from caring deeply in a world that rarely slows down. And let your peace gently reorganize this restless mind. Realign priorities, quiet the noise of comparison, and remind this heart that it is allowed to receive love, allowed to be supported, and allowed to be held without having to earn a single moment of your presence, Father. In the gentle rhythm of this prayer that keeps breathing through a weary heart, I bring before you the quiet fear of not being enough, the hidden worry of falling behind, and the silent pressure to keep proving value in a world that measures worth by speed and results. Yet you never rush what you lovingly shape, and you never compare what you intentionally created, because you know the story behind every delay, every detour, every slow season that this soul had to walk through. And you understand how deeply it hurts to feel invisible while still doing your best. And in this tender moment, if your heart is craving relief from expectations that feel heavier than your strength, gently invite God to release you from the weight of needing to be more than you are right now, because you are the God who delights in progress that no one applauds, who celebrates courage that does not look impressive, who treasures faith that quietly survives another difficult day. And I ask you to heal the places where comparison stole confidence, where disappointment reshaped identity, and where criticism echoed longer than encouragement. Restore a gentle and honest sense of worth in this tired soul. Remind this heart that its value was never built by achievement, never maintained by perfection, and never threatened by slow growth. And let your steady and patient love rebuild self-trust, soften insecurity, and teach this weary spirit to walk freely again, without constantly questioning whether it is enough for you. Lord, as this prayer continues to flow through the quiet chambers of a tired and weary heart, I bring before you the memories that still feel unfinished, the conversations that never found closure, and the losses that quietly changed the way this soul learned to hope. Because you understand that grief does not always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like silence, distraction, or emotional distance. And you never rush healing where tenderness is still needed. And in this gentle space, if there is something in your heart that still hurts to remember, softly invite God to step into that memory with you and hold what still feels fragile inside. Because you are the God who walks into painful places without reopening wounds, who touches broken areas without shame, who heals slowly without erasing the meaning of what was lost. And I ask you to bring calm to the places where sadness still hides, to soothe the quiet ache that resurfaces when life slows down, to restore joy without forcing happiness, and to replace emotional numbness with safe and gentle feeling again. Teach this heart that it does not need to protect itself from every emotion, that feeling deeply does not make it weak, and that allowing you into painful memories does not make the pain stronger. It makes the heart lighter, and let this tired soul slowly rediscover the ability to feel peace without guilt, laughter without fear, and hope without immediately expecting disappointment. Father, in this soft and sacred unfolding of your presence, I bring before you the tired courage of a soul that keeps choosing kindness even after being hurt, the quiet discipline of loving when it would be easier to close the heart, and the fragile bravery of trusting again after disappointment has taught this spirit to stay guarded. Yet you never ask this heart to become hardened in order to survive. You never confuse wisdom with emotional distance, and you never celebrate strength that was built by shutting down tenderness. And in this gentle moment, if you feel your heart longing to love freely again without fear of being wounded, quietly invite God to soften the walls around your spirit and teach you how to feel safe again in His care. Because you are the God who heals trust without forcing vulnerability, who rebuilds emotional safety without rushing the process, who restores connection without ignoring the scars. And I ask you now to untangle the quiet defensiveness that grew from past pain. Release the tension this soul holds when expecting disappointment, and teach this heart to recognize safe love again. Patient love, steady love, love that does not disappear when emotions become complicated. Let your presence gently retrain this tired spirit to open slowly, wisely, and peacefully, without guilt for needing time, without shame for needing boundaries, and without fear that choosing gentleness again will lead only to loss. Because in your hands, tenderness becomes strength, and love becomes a place of rest rather than risk. Lord, as this prayer continues its slow and quiet journey through a weary soul, I bring before you the heavy burden of self-blame, the private habit of replaying mistakes, and the painful belief that past choices have permanently limited the future. Yet you never define a life by its worst moment, and you never reduce a heart to its failures, because your mercy is wider than regret, and your grace reaches further than memory. And in this tender moment, if your heart still carries something it cannot forgive itself for, gently invite God to sit with you in that place and speak truth where shame has been loud, because you are the God who restores dignity without rewriting honesty, who brings forgiveness without minimizing responsibility, and who offers new beginnings without denying the lessons of the past. And I ask you now to quiet the accusing voice that keeps this soul trapped in yesterday, to soften the heavy weight of guilt that still lingers in quiet thoughts, and to gently release this heart from the endless need to punish itself. Remind this tired spirit that growth is allowed to come after failure, that joy is allowed to return after regret, and that peace is allowed to exist even when the story includes broken chapters. And let your mercy slowly rebuild courage where shame once lived, teaching this weary heart to step forward again without dragging old mistakes into every new moment of hope. Father, in this gentle continuation of your nearness, I bring before you the quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to hold faith steady in a world that constantly shifts, the silent confusion when prayers sound different from the answers that arrive, and the fragile effort of trusting you when understanding feels out of reach. Yet you never demand clarity before offering comfort, and you never require certainty before giving peace, because you know how heavy it feels to walk forward without seeing far ahead. And in this soft and sacred moment, if your heart is tired of trying to make sense of everything, quietly invite God to carry what you cannot explain and hold what you cannot control. Because you are the God who leads without revealing every step, who stays close without giving every reason, who builds trust not through explanations, but through presence. And I ask you now to release this soul from the pressure of having to understand before resting, to ease the tension of unanswered questions, and to restore quiet confidence where doubt has quietly grown. Teach this heart to walk gently with mystery, to trust you in incomplete stories, and to find peace not in perfect clarity, but in your steady companionship. And let this tired spirit feel safe again in the middle of uncertainty, knowing that being held by you is enough even when answers remain far away. Lord, in this quiet stretch of the journey where strength feels thinner than yesterday, and courage feels softer than it used to be, I bring before you the invisible fatigue of trying again after many small disappointments, the tired hope that still rises even when confidence no longer feels natural, and the fragile willingness to keep showing up to life when motivation quietly fades. Yet you see every unseen act of perseverance, every private decision to not give up, every gentle effort that no one celebrates, and you call it faith even when this soul only calls it survival. And in this tender moment, if your heart feels worn from always having to begin again, softly invite God to stand beside you and carry the weight of starting over one more time, because you are the God who does not grow tired of new beginnings, who never becomes impatient with slow rebuilding, and who never loses interest in unfinished stories. And I ask you now to renew quiet courage inside this weary spirit, to heal the discouragement that settles after repeated delays, to soften the fear of trying again and being disappointed once more, and to gently remind this heart that progress does not need to be loud to be real. Restore trust in small steps, rebuild confidence in gentle choices, and let this tired soul feel your steady presence whispering that today's effort, however small it feels, is still meaningful, still seen, and still held safely in your patient and faithful hands. Father, in the slow and tender unfolding of your care, I bring before you the quiet loneliness that can exist even when life feels full, the subtle distance that grows when no one truly sees how heavy the heart has become, and the silent ache of feeling surrounded yet still misunderstood. Yet you never confuse presence with connection, and you never mistake noise for belonging, because you know how deeply a soul longs to be known without having to explain its pain. And in this gentle moment, if your heart has been craving real connection and honest comfort, softly invite God to draw closer to you right now and fill the empty spaces no one else can reach. Because you are the God who stays when conversations end, who listens when words run out, who understands what this tired heart cannot even name. And I ask you now to soothe the loneliness that hides beneath busy schedules, to heal the quiet sadness that settles when support feels distant, and to restore a sense of belonging deep inside this weary spirit. Remind this heart that it was created for connection and never meant to carry life alone, and let your presence become a steady companion in ordinary moments, quiet evenings, slow mornings, and fragile thoughts, teaching this tired soul that being alone does not mean being abandoned, and that even in unseen hours, your gentle closeness remains faithful, patient, and real. Lord, in this gentle moment where the heart grows quieter and the soul becomes more honest with its own limits, I bring before you the tired longing to feel safe again inside life, the quiet desire to trust the future without constantly preparing for disappointment, and the fragile hope that still survives beneath layers of caution and emotional fatigue. Because you see how deeply this weary soul wants to believe that good things can still come without being taken away too soon. And you understand how past pain teaches the heart to stay alert even during peaceful seasons. And in this soft and sacred pause, if your spirit is longing to release control and rest in something steadier than fear, quietly invite God to hold your future and gently carry what you cannot protect anymore. Because you are the God who walks ahead without leaving this soul behind, who prepares unseen paths with patience and care, who protects without suffocating and leads without pressure. And I ask you now to calm the anxious imagination that keeps rehearsing loss, to heal the quiet habit of expecting the worst, and to restore simple trust where constant self-protection has lived. Remind this heart that not every chapter must end in pain, not every blessing must be temporary, and not every season of peace must be followed by loss. And let this tired soul slowly learn to enjoy calm moments without suspicion, to welcome joy without fear, and to walk forward without constantly bracing for what might go wrong. knowing that your faithful presence remains steady even when tomorrow still feels uncertain. Father, in this quiet continuation where your presence feels closer than breath, I bring before you the tired mind that never seems to fully rest, the thoughts that keep circling long after the body has slowed down, and the gentle exhaustion of carrying responsibilities that do not pause when emotions need a break. Yet you know how mental weariness can feel heavier than physical fatigue, and you understand how easily worry disguises itself as responsibility, and how overthinking slowly steals peace without making any sound. And in this tender moment, if your mind feels crowded and heavy tonight, gently invite God to enter your thoughts and bring His calm into everything that feels overwhelming inside you, because you are the God who orders confusion without scolding it, who quiets anxiety without dismissing its cause, and who replaces racing thoughts with steady truth. And I ask you now to soften the inner noise that keeps the soul alert, even when nothing is wrong. Slow down the restless imagination that keeps rehearsing problems that may never come, and restore clarity where exhaustion has blurred perspective. Teach this heart to release what cannot be solved tonight, to trust you with unfinished worries, and to rest without guilt. And let this tired spirit experience the gift of a quiet mind, a lighter chest, and a gentler awareness that you remain in control even when this soul finally allows itself to stop trying to hold everything together. Lord, in this tender place where a weary soul slowly learns how to soften again, I bring before you the quiet struggle of believing that this life still holds beauty after so much effort and so many long seasons of waiting. Because exhaustion can quietly convince the heart that joy belongs to other people, to other stories, to easier paths. Yet you gently remind this tired spirit that goodness was never reserved for the strongest or the fastest, but lovingly prepared for those who keep walking even when their steps feel small. And in this gentle moment, if your heart feels uncertain about whether happiness is still meant for you, quietly invite God to awaken hope again inside you and gently reshape the way you expect good things to come, because you are the God who restores wonder without ignoring pain, who plants light in places that were shaped by disappointment, and who teaches fragile hearts to trust joy without needing to protect themselves from it. And I ask you now to heal the quiet belief that life will always be heavy, to soften the guarded anticipation that keeps this soul from fully receiving what is good, and to gently reopen the ability to feel excited about tomorrow without fear of being let down. Teach this tired heart to recognize small joys again, gentle moments, unexpected kindness, peaceful pauses, and subtle beauty hidden in ordinary days, and let this weary spirit slowly rediscover that hope is not dangerous, that joy is not naive, and that trusting your goodness is still safe, even after everything it has already endured. Father, in this quiet and sacred flow where your presence continues to surround a tired and weary soul, I bring before you the gentle confusion that rises when life does not turn out the way this heart once imagined, the silent grief of releasing expectations that were built with hope and sincerity, and the tender sadness of learning that some dreams change shape along the way. Yet you never treat disappointment as failure, and you never see redirected paths as wasted time, because you understand how deeply it hurts to let go of what once felt certain. And in this soft moment, if your heart is holding something it had to release even though it still mattered, gently invite God to meet you in that letting go and heal what still feels unfinished inside. Because you are the God who redeems altered plans without diminishing their meaning, who carries broken expectations without erasing their beauty, and who creates new purpose without mocking what once inspired this soul. And I ask you now to comfort the ache of what did not become, to soothe the quiet regret of choices that still feel heavy, and to restore peace where disappointment quietly reshaped confidence. Teach this heart to trust that a different path does not mean a lesser one, that new beginnings can grow from surrendered dreams, and that your love still gently leads this weary spirit toward a future filled with meaning, even when it looks different from what was once imagined. Lord, in this quiet and patient movement of your presence through a tired and weary soul, I bring before you the slow loss of confidence that comes when effort feels unnoticed, when progress feels invisible, and when the heart quietly wonders if what it is doing still matters. Yet, you never overlook sincerity. You never miss quiet faithfulness, and you never forget the small obediences that no one else sees. And in this tender moment, if your heart feels unsure whether your quiet dedication is still worth it, gently invite God to remind you that your life carries meaning far beyond what can be measured, because you are the God who treasures hidden faith, who smiles over unseen courage, and who keeps careful record of every gentle act of love. And I ask you now to restore quiet assurance in this weary spirit, to heal the discouragement that grows when results take too long, to soften the heaviness of feeling replaceable, and to rebuild purpose where motivation has slowly thinned. Teach this heart to trust that even small seeds change the soil, that even unnoticed kindness reshapes lives, and that even slow obedience carries eternal weight. And let this tired soul feel again that what it offers in love, honesty, and perseverance is never wasted in your hands, never ignored by your heart, and never forgotten by your faithful care. Father, in this gentle unfolding of your quiet guidance, I bring before you the fragile courage of a soul that is learning how to listen again, after so much noise, so many opinions, and so many inner voices competed for attention and slowly drowned out what truly mattered. Because exhaustion does not only come from doing too much, it also comes from not knowing which direction to trust. And you see how this weary heart longs for clarity without pressure and guidance without fear. And in this soft moment, if your spirit is longing for direction but feels afraid of making another wrong turn, gently invite God to speak into your confusion and lead you with his calm and loving wisdom, because you are the God who guides without shouting, who corrects without humiliating, and who redirects without breaking the heart that tried its best. And I ask you now to quiet the inner chaos that makes every decision feel heavy, soften the fear of choosing wrongly, and restore confidence in hearing your gentle voice again. Teach this tired soul to trust small nudges, peaceful convictions, and subtle confirmations that come quietly rather than dramatically, and let your presence become a steady compass in the middle of uncertainty, reminding this weary heart that it does not need to see the entire road to safely take the next step with you. Lord, in this soft and steady continuation of your care, I bring before you the quiet weight of responsibility this tired soul carries for others, the constant awareness of being needed, and the gentle pressure of trying not to disappoint the people who lean on this heart, because you see how often this weary spirit places everyone else's needs before its own, and quietly tells itself it can rest later. Yet you never created this heart to survive only by giving, and you never designed love to become a slow and hidden exhaustion. And in this tender moment, if you feel the weight of always being strong for others resting heavily on your chest, gently invite God to care for you now, in the same way you care for so many, because you are the God who protects the caregivers, who strengthens the gentle, and who restores those who quietly pour themselves out without being noticed. And I ask you now to lift the invisible pressure this soul feels to always be available, always steady, always capable. Soften the fear of letting others down, and heal the quiet guilt that appears whenever rest feels necessary. Teach this tired heart that it is allowed to receive the same patience it offers, the same compassion it gives, and the same grace it extends so easily to others. And let your presence gently remind this weary spirit that it does not lose its worth when it pauses, and it does not lose its love when it finally allows itself to be held. Father, in this gentle and unbroken flow of your nearness, I bring before you the quiet fear that this tired soul sometimes carries about the future, the uncertainty that lingers when plans feel fragile and stability feels temporary, and the silent worry of whether there will truly be enough strength for what still lies ahead. Yet you have never asked this heart to survive tomorrow with today's strength, and you have never required this spirit to carry what has not yet arrived. And in this tender moment, if your heart feels anxious about what is coming and unsure of how you will face it, softly invite God to step into your tomorrow and hold it for you with peace, because you are the God who walks ahead without abandoning what is behind, who prepares grace before challenges appear, and who surrounds every unknown season with faithful care. And I ask you now to calm the fearful imagination that keeps scanning the horizon for trouble, to release the quiet tension that tightens the chest when the future feels unclear, and to restore gentle confidence where worry has slowly taken root. Teach this tired soul to trust that provision will meet every need at the right moment, that strength will rise when it is required, and that courage will be present even when the path still looks uncertain. And let this weary heart feel safe again, in your steady promise that no tomorrow will arrive without your presence already waiting there. Lord, in this calm and sacred space where your presence continues to gently hold a tired and weary soul, I bring before you the deep longing for stability, for something steady to lean on when emotions rise and circumstances shift without warning, because this heart has learned how quickly life can change and how fragile certainty can feel. Yet you remain the only place where security is not threatened by loss, delay, or disappointment. And you patiently teach this weary spirit that safety is not found in control, plans, or perfect outcomes, but in your faithful and unchanging love. And in this quiet moment, if your heart desires a place to finally rest, without constantly preparing for what might go wrong, gently invite God to become your steady ground and your quiet refuge right now, because you are the God who does not move when storms come, who does not withdraw when weakness appears, and who does not grow distant when faith feels small. And I ask you now to anchor this tired soul in your presence, to replace emotional instability with gentle confidence, and to rebuild inner security where fear has slowly weakened trust. Teach this heart to stop bracing itself for loss, to stop guarding every good moment, and to stop living as if peace must always be temporary. And let your spirit quietly establish a deeper sense of belonging inside this weary heart, reminding it that it does not need to run, protect itself, or stay alert to remain safe, because in you, this soul is already held, already protected, and already surrounded by a love that does not collapse when life becomes uncertain. Father, in this gentle and faithful continuation of your presence, I bring before you the tired desire of this soul to feel useful again, to believe that its life still carries purpose even in seasons that feel quiet, slow, and unseen, because exhaustion often makes the heart confuse silence with insignificance and rest with failure. Yet you never measure a life by how busy it looks or how visible its impact becomes. You measure it by love, by faithfulness, and by the quiet obedience that keeps choosing what is right, even when no one is watching. And in this tender moment, if your heart has been questioning whether you still matter in this season, softly invite God to remind you of the sacred value of your life right now, exactly as it is, because you are the God who assigns purpose to hidden seasons, who grows character when applause disappears, and who works deeply when progress cannot be seen. And I ask you now to heal the discouragement that comes from comparing timelines, to restore confidence in small and ordinary contributions, and to gently rebuild a sense of meaning where routine has started to feel empty. Teach this tired heart to trust that quiet faithfulness still shapes futures, that unseen prayers still move heaven, and that gentle consistency still changes lives. and let this weary soul feel again the quiet joy of knowing that being present, being kind, and being faithful today is already enough in your loving and purposeful hands. Father, in this final and tender breath of this prayer, I bring before you the whole story of this tired and weary soul, every hidden tear, every quiet victory, every unseen sacrifice, every moment when faith felt fragile but still chose to stay. And I thank you because you never left this heart alone in any chapter, not in the confusion, not in the waiting, not in the slow healing, and not in the silent battles no one else noticed. And in this sacred moment, if your heart desires to place everything you are and everything you carry into God's hands, gently invite Him to receive you completely, just as you are, without fear and without holding back. Because you are the God who finishes what you begin, who restores what life tried to diminish, and who gently leads weary hearts into quiet renewal. And I ask you now to seal this soul in peace, to steady this heart in hope, to cover this mind with calm, and to surround this life with your faithful presence, reminding this tired spirit that it is deeply loved, carefully guided, and never walking alone again. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His gentle light rest upon your heart and quiet your thoughts. May His peace guard your steps and His love hold your future. And may you go forward softly strengthened, gently renewed, and safely carried by the unfailing grace of God.